Principle number 6, the principle of renunciation. Greetings. Greetings, my friend. Whoever you are, greetings. You are a person with a mind, emotions, a physical body, and spirit. A person who loves, works, struggles, and suffers. Why do we suffer, my friend? What is the root of suffering? Why must we suffer? Why shouldn't we suffer? Why do we consider suffering so horrendous? Why do we run away from suffering? Where does suffering come from? How does it reach our lives? What can we do to stop suffering altogether? These and many more questions and doubts about suffering touch the deepest parts of the human being. You most certainly have suffered, will suffer, and most probably will continue suffering the same as every other human being. This statement seems pessimistic, but it is not, because suffering is based on laws and principles. You're probably asking, does the law say that one must suffer? Most certainly not. What does the law state then? Do you know which law relates to suffering? Do you practice it in your life? Why are you doing concrete things in order not to suffer? The sixth principle for the liberation of man, the principle of light, the principle of clarity, the principle that converts a man who is a slave to his pain into a free man, is the answer to the previously asked questions. This principle says that if you pursue pleasure, you chain yourself to pain and suffering. But if you do not harm your mental, emotional, physical, sexual, and spiritual lives, and if you do not harm your fellow human beings, you can freely enjoy anything. This is the sacred sixth principle. The principle that if you reach its full comprehension by reflecting and meditating on it, practice it in your life, and teach it to others, it will make you a free person, free from pain and suffering. If you pursue the pleasures of life, you will be chained to pain and suffering. But if you do not harm your physical health, emotional, mental, sexual, and spiritual bodies, and if you do not harm others, you can do anything you want. My friend, this is the principle with which we will work in this message. Let's see what is the real meaning of, if you pursue pleasure, you will be chained to pain and suffering. Let's analyze this first part of the principle. If you pursue pleasure does not mean that you cannot enjoy life, because you can. But under certain conditions, the importance lies in that you do not pursue it. The importance lies in that you should not have it constantly on your mind, that your life not be based on just the pursuit of pleasure, that your mind, emotions, and body are not permanently aware of pleasure, so you do not make a God out of it. This is what pursuit means, that you are not thinking constantly of pleasure, that you are not preoccupied with its search, that you are not making sacrifices on its behalf, that you do not harm anybody in your search for pleasure, that you do not turn into plain human flesh, that you do not lose your dignity or sell your soul to the devil for it, not forgetting your engagements or duties, or commitments or obligations. The meaning of pursuing pleasure, above all else, is to fall into its arms and become a slave to it, making it your God, making it be an aspect of your life, like the pleasure of food, pleasure of comfort, pleasure of sexual behavior, pleasure of laziness and abandonment. Do not pursue pleasure for itself, or it will become your God, and you will become its slave. Pleasure is a merciless God. The weak person that surrenders to it pays a horrible price, real suffering and pain. Yes, my friend, if you would know that pleasure and pain, pleasure and suffering, are two faces of the same coin, two ends of the same stick, so to speak, and you have one because you don't want the other. You seek enjoyment. You pursue pleasure. Very well. You will reach a point where it is not there anymore, and then the God of pleasure will present his invoice. The more you enjoyed your pleasure, the more you became a slave of it. The larger the invoice will be, the bigger your pain, and the more your suffering. The more you search for this pleasure, the more pain you will come across. Pleasure and suffering, two faces of the same coin. My friend, have you recently experienced a situation involving pleasure? Let's see. Get yourself a paper and pencil and start to recall and think with me. Let's ask the following question. What pleasures did I pursue? Come on, let's release the ties of our memory. We do not want to permit the God of pleasure to affect our memory. What kind of pleasure have I been pursuing today? On what pleasures is my mind fixed? I will give you a hint. Everything that charms you and turns into a habit is a pleasure. For instance, music can turn into a pleasure, and we can pursue it, spending half of our income on it and avoiding other engagements to enjoy. Cars, the house, furniture, clothing, and food that we cannot afford. Physical pleasures, emotional, sexual, mental, and sick pleasures. There are other kinds too, such as making others suffer, making others become impatient, not working, ignoring duties and responsibilities, ignoring your fellow citizens, society, humanity, not giving credit to our Father for what is His. These are pleasures too. How about doing whatever one wants to do, not following laws, justifying behaviors, a way of life based on excuses? All of these are small and large pleasures. Yes, my friend, the list is very long. But if you are one of the people that really wants to evolve, one who has already experienced the bitter taste the God of pleasure has for us, you know what I'm talking about. Well, what about suffering? What can it be? It's the same thing, and I am sure you have tasted it too. The God of pleasure, along with its inseparable friend, the God of suffering, are playing with you, as they do with 95% of humanity. If you are already a slave of the gods of pleasure and suffering, if you are already aware of their tremendous power and of your great weakness, of your lack of resistance to the bitter-sweet taste of this God, this demanding God, this God that can afford the luxury of giving you a candy or a chocolate that is sweet for a few seconds and bitter thereafter. If you are awake, and awake to this fact, then you can follow this advice and perform the detailed analysis of all your past pleasures and of those you continue to hold today, even those you plan to take on. Remember, pleasure infiltrates all aspects of life, from sleeping an extra 5 minutes in the morning to simply not attending to your children when they need your help. There are thousands and thousands of them. You must come to know to what degree we are dominated by the God of pleasure and pain, realizing that all of the advertising that exists in our world today is to draw you into some pleasure, pain, or other. Just open a newspaper. You'll see a wonderful house advertised, or a beautiful girl with a wonderful product, both pulling on your strings that call up your desire to have them, but neither of them will tell you what price you will have to pay, aside from the advertised price, of course. These are very expensive prices. In fact, most of our income is spent on pleasure. Yes, behind the owning of a house there is a pleasure. Owning a set of silverware, a dress, being married to a particular man or woman. These all involve pleasure to some degree. But to some people, these pleasures are different in meaning and degree. I'm speaking of the people who are consciously working on their liberation, those who have made peace with, and those who are loved and revered by the God of pleasure, suffering. To these people, living costs a lot less, and they have plenty of free time to take care of very important matters. Do many more important things for their friends, for themselves, and for humanity. These people are free from slavery. Aside the list of the pleasures you have pursued, make another list of the suffering you have encountered in the past, the ones that you are living with now. Ask yourself, what suffering, pain, and problems are repeated over and over in my life? Search your mind, make a list of all them, and then ask yourself for the reasons behind them. What pleasure were you pursuing that caused past suffering? Do this carefully and record your answers. Yes, my friend, here you may find some answers that are bitter. Then analyze your vices and habits, all of them, one after the other, physical, emotional, mental, sexual, and spiritual. Vices are, simply put, part of the same God of pleasure we have been discussing. They also attracted us. We like them, and now we have become a master over us. What are your vices? Write them all down. Then make a list of your sicknesses, psychological, physical, emotional, and mental. Let's make a list of the harm that your pleasures have caused in your life, and of course of the suffering and economical consequences. What physical sicknesses do you have, my friend? What emotional ailments? What anger? Behind each ailment, behind each bad mood, and each obstacle you faced, you had a pleasure behind it, or at least were searching for one. Yes, my friend, we are governed by the God of pleasure, suffering, to a great degree. If you pursue pleasure, you are going to chain yourself to pain and suffering. You will chain yourself. Do you realize it? You will be handcuffed to pain and suffering for a long time. Everything that you have pursued as pleasure in the past must be multiplied by 100, and the result will be, as a minimum, the price you pay in suffering. Now you can say that you have not suffered, that you have enjoyed life a lot. My brother, if this is your case, you better study this principle carefully over and over for at least 49 days, in the morning and at night, until the last cell of your body accepts these ideas. You have to understand it to become conscious of the disgrace of the human race that has not awakened to the fact that pleasure and pain are two faces of the same coin, and that we always see the pleasurable side of things first. However, there cannot be sweetness without bitterness. It is impossible because it would violate the law of duality, the law of polarity. Everything is dual in the cosmos. That is the law. Black and white, day and night, hot and cold, failure and success, love and hate. They are all parts of the same thing. By now you know it well. Everything is dual, and the opposite of pleasure is suffering or pain. Fix this in your mind. You must be very strong. You must be honest and impartial with yourself. Prepare your list. The most important is the list of those pleasures that you pursue most frequently. You must be aware of them so you can do something about them if your goal is to be liberated. Or are you one of those people that likes involution? Among those people who enjoy things for 25 or 30 years, the initial part of their lives, and then for the remaining 40 years or so, live with pain and suffering, deceptions and frustrations, resentments and degeneration. If you belong to this kind of person, this message came into your hands by mistake. Well, not really by mistake, because each cause has its effect. So it would be impossible for this message to be in your hands as a mistake instead of some earlier cause. Your being has attracted it. So you have it now because you are in need of this remedy. It is because you are ill, the same way I was, my friend, the same way all people throughout thousands and thousands of years have fallen into the arms of the god of pleasure, pain. I too was one of them, and one of the biggest searchers for pleasure. Let me say, our friend in common poisoned me with much suffering. I almost touched bottom, but our friend also gave me this secret message, and now I'm passing it on to you. How can we balance the polarity of pain, suffering? You would probably ask if life would be worth living if there were no pleasure in our lives. Is life worth living without pleasure? Is life worth anything without pleasures? Wouldn't it be dull? What do you think, my friend? Well, I think I know what you're thinking. To live a whole life without pleasures sounds too dull, right? Well, let's do the following. Shut your eyes, relax, and put on your thinking cap. Bring to your mind the moment of the biggest pleasure you have had in your life, the pleasure you remember as your greatest. Wasn't it something that lasted a short time? Be honest. Isn't it true that in 90% of the time that you went in search of pleasure, you returned finding little of it or even empty-handed? Isn't it true that 90% of the time you pursued pleasure, it turned out to be just an illusion? Be honest. Be very honest with yourself. I'm sure you can recall many of the times you looked for it, when you pursued it, or when you planned it carefully. I will do this and that. I will go here and there. I will travel. I will buy that car, and I will finally get to do this or that. Isn't it true that for the majority of occasions, everything was just pure hope? You were fooled by this magnificent God. After all that, what a disappointment, right? What a bitter taste in your mouth. I know it well, my friend. How many times have we not gone in search for pleasure or some kind or other, each in our own way, and then ending dissatisfied with bitter taste, frustrated. Yet, like fools, after 2 or 3 days, we became attracted again to something and repeated the cycle. Yes, my friend, everything conspires to attract our attention, our 5 senses, our sex, eroticism, and our imagination more than anything, our imagination. When we are at rest and suddenly get an image of some enjoyment, some pleasure, and we leave something important behind unattended to pursue it. Later, we don't even remember what we left behind before responding to the pleasure impulse. It can arrive through friends, newspapers, TV. There are many sources teasing you with the visions of pleasurable things. And the pain is there too. Hospitals are full of the sick. Psychiatrists and psychologists are as thick as lawyers. Sick organs caused by bad habits wait hopefully for a donor. This situation started as a silly pleasure we had, and it turned into a habit and a vice, then a sickness. Well, I hope that by now we are starting to understand that if you pursue pleasure in life, you will be chained to suffering. If you do not harm or interfere in any way your mental, emotional, physical, sexual, or spiritual health, nor interfering with others to obtain pleasures, you are free to enjoy them as you wish. This principle, the sixth of the 12 for your liberation and for all human beings of goodwill, tells it like it is. You can enjoy anything as much as you want, and with full freedom when the opportunity arises. But here is where the secret lies, my friend. We live in a cosmos of order. We live in a perfect world conceived and created by a perfect creator. Can you imagine our common creator who created all of the universe doing it otherwise? It doesn't matter how you understand your creator, as an energy, as a force, an intelligence, a being, but can you imagine him chaining man to this principle? Can you imagine a perfect creation giving its creatures a gray world without fun? This is not possible, right? The Creator could not have been that intelligent, or could not have created a perfect universe. Then could he be a cruel creator that attracts man with pleasure which gives him nothing but pain and suffering? Well, let's go to the truth. Simply put, it is not one or the other. Let's get into something more profound, my dear struggling companion. Pleasure is the first lesson of the earth. It is something our five senses can see and be enjoyed by our physical body, but it is short-lasting and goes away quickly. Our second body, the one that pays the price of things, is called the emotional body, and is the one that suffers the consequences of the pleasures of the physical body. This is quite simple, but if one goes deeper, it leads to the mental body. It is with the mental body that man can find a balance between pleasure and pain, where he can balance the eternal conflict between the physical and emotional attraction to pleasure and the corresponding price of suffering. Let's look at this in the following manner. Our mind has to realize that the pursuit of more pleasures of any kind yields more problems, and no, it's not worth it. Your mind has to understand that pleasure is short-lived. It goes away quickly. It is pure illusion, and that an instant later the consequence of suffering will show themselves. It does not show up on the first, second, or third day. It will in its own time by the law of cause and effect, an unfailing, just, and perfect law. And then we will suffer. If this idea becomes fixed enough in your mind, then you can be alert and will make the commitment to follow the teaching of this principle, especially with those pleasures that you pursue now. This work will prepare you to be careful, avoiding these old traps or pleasures as if they were a disease. This first part will give you willpower. These ideas will be fixed in your mind, making it alert to the things that can trigger new bouts of pleasure and pain. Then you will have to go through some tests. After some time, when you start feeling strong enough, you will have to go out again in search of the God of pleasure. You must retrace your steps and start with your old pleasures. The least important ones at first are best. You will get close to them. Allow yourself to be tempted. Then apply your will and say, no, thank you very much. I have already tried this in the past. This is how you give up a pleasure. Look for it and then turn away from it. This is the most important step you will take. First, let's do the analysis of your pleasures. Then we have to make a list of your sufferings along with their causes. All of this is so you can be aware of the truth of this principle. Then you will have to stop indulging in your old pleasures until your mind is fully involved with this new truth and you develop a strong will against them. After this is done, you will go again and face those pleasures, allowing the temptation, then giving them up. You will be able to say with a smile, "No, thank you." You will be able to see and not touch. At this point, you will start to be respected by the God of pleasure, pain. This God will give you a diploma, a graduation diploma, because this is one of the lessons that is being given on planet Earth. Then he will look for other candidates, people like you are today, still suffering pain and spending their money in its pursuit. I repeat that it is not free, it is very costly. Are you willing to do this, my friend? Well, you can decide. You have free will, or at least a little free will. What do you decide? Your Creator has given you a spark of reasoning. If you can't feel the veracity of this principle, just look around you. People pretend to enjoy their pleasures. They brag about them, yet they don't talk about their suffering. If you're ready for this work, it means you are now a person who will not do whatever comes to mind. You will not allow yourself to be fooled because you are aiming towards your liberation. You know that you have to pay the price because everything in life has a price. If you are able to come out of the palace of the God of pleasure, pain, with a diploma and the honor medal on your chest, the sun of enjoyment will shine on you. You will start to discover different types of pleasure, the type we call enjoyment. And this one is permanent. It has no polarity and can make a perfect triangle with pleasure and suffering, balancing them to the level of enjoyment. Have you enjoyed a sundown or a sunrise lately? These are free for you to see. We do not usually look for them, but there they are, always. Have you sometimes enjoyed the smile of a child? I think those people who keep a diary do not record these things, but they do have entries like going to a club. I'm giving you a clue for you to know to which kind of pleasure I am referring to. It is the enjoyment of nature. God's creation is at your feet, and if your mind is not set to pursue common pleasures, if your emotions are not involved in the oppression of suffering and pain, then all of your being is in harmony and can start to perceive the wonders of creation, which is pure pleasure. Those who have entered into this dimension of joy will start to meet people of this same level. People who experience joy when opportunities arise for the minimal things which are free. You can start enjoying serving others. You can start to enjoy wonderful ideas of evolution. You can start to enjoy a new understanding. When the mind is not agitated or searching for pleasure, when it is at peace and calm, it can understand things that were not understood before. It can understand the secrets of the universe and can start to communicate with other people. Fear and worry then disappear. When one has a diploma from the God of pleasure, pain, one can start repairing damaged organs, balance one's emotions, contradictions, and conflicts. Suddenly, work and activity will turn into a tremendous enjoyment. The only thing a person in search of pleasure wants is to be able to finish the work as promptly as possible so he can go out to look for his next pleasure. This is a truth, my friend. We have all done this. With a new dimension of joy, you can even enjoy sitting down. You will be able to experience joy while walking, breathing, and knowing that God is within you, that you are free. This is joy. You know something, my friend. He who crosses into this dimension and is admitted into the circle of the people that experience this joy, that have succeeded because of an iron will, that have renounced the smallest pleasure because they know it is only an illusion. You will find joy is health. If you enter into this circle of people, joy will be in you, and you will be able to transmit it. Joy is transmittable. You can transmit it to other people. You can make other people feel and enjoy it when they are in your proximity. Others will have joy with your presence. Yes, my friend, pleasure is felt by you alone, and it is so short and weak. You can talk to others about your pleasures, and all you get from this is anger. Why? Because as others believe you have your pleasures, they at the same time feel envious. When you're suffering the consequences of your pleasures and seek help, your friends, your wife, and children come to you with, "What's wrong? Poor thing, you suffer." And the only thing you can do is spread it to others. This is the way it is, my friend. You know it too. Well, my friend, be prudent, be cautious. Wake up. Acknowledge this. Open your eyes. I would like to know you personally. I can feel you. I can feel your suffering and self-deception. When you went out the other day in search of pleasure, I could experience the bitter taste that resulted. I cannot stop remembering because I have lived this situation over and over myself. My friend, your work is very simple. Make your list. Study this principle several times. Then prepare your list. Do the exercises that have been mentioned, and remember that if you pursue pleasure, you will be chained to pain and suffering. But while you experience it without harming your health, physical, mental, emotional, sexual, or spiritual bodies, or other people, you can have your enjoyment when the opportunity arises. For this situation, my friend, strong willpower is necessary. You need willpower. You must start by putting behind you all the things you like. I am firm on this, my friend. All of the things you like. Start slowly. Yes, slowly. You must also start to do and experience all of the things that you dislike, doing it also slowly. Investigate and ask questions. Make a selection of 15 to 20 people, and out of those you know, be sincere with them, and ask them to be sincere with you. Ask them to see if they are really enjoying their pleasures. Analyze them to see how much they are paying for their illusion of pleasure. It is an illusion, nothing else. And the majority feel bad to say that they are really not enjoying themselves. They feel bad to say that they went on a trip and it was all a waste of time and money. They will not tell you that they were disappointed with the car they bought, which was so expensive, and the house too, and so many other things like this. My friend, be judicious, be prudent. Write down the principle, the law of polarity, the law of duality, on 150 small sheets of paper. Place these papers everywhere around your house, in your closet, in the pockets of your jacket, in your shoes, under your pillow, in front of the sink, on the mirror, on the steering wheel of your car, in your wallet, next to your license, in the glove compartment of the car, on your desk at work. Place them everywhere until they remind you of this lesson. Be a person that is able to differentiate, able to know the value in his thoughts and judgments, and able to realize what is and what is not of real value. A person that is able to make decisions, a brave and courageous person who is not afraid to face his illusions and does not allow the side within, the side that we love, the part that wants us down low in failure, to drive us. I know this side of you will show itself often as you do this work. It did to me. It will bother you with the thought, well, if there is no pleasure, what is life all about? But now you'll know there is joy, an authentic, permanent joy. It is even the kind of feeling that you will be able to transmit to others. Can it be transmitted to others? Yes, it's true. If you are able to liberate yourself, going through the first stages called pleasure, pain, and suffering, until you arrive at the joy of life, it is true that you can and will want to transmit this to other people. I do not believe you would be a man in the light, happy, liberated, one who would be satisfied with living in a world where people are slaves of pleasure and pain. Am I right? I personally had trouble resisting temptation when I was working with this lesson. Others who received this message were able to resist it easier than I could. But I learned in the end, this message can give you real value in your life. This joy we speak of is real, and you will know it as you watch others being helped to their happiness. Later, the rest of society will move to a true happiness, and finally, the world will turn to this same happiness. Don't believe that I oppose any of the aspects of pain or pleasure. I do not. They must exist in this world until all of humanity can realize that they are really illusions. He who is awakened from that illusion, he who comes out of this dream, can easily understand he must exist because of the many people who still have not arrived to this same consciousness. Needless to say, one understands and perceives when one finally awakens. I am hoping that you are a complete human being who will bring forth all the help to people who share your world. May our common Creator bestow His blessing upon you, care for you, and aid you to awaken. Tomorrow when you go out in your new awareness, and day after day as you work with this principle, may He show you the illusory sides of pleasure and give you more examples of what you have received, called joy. But I am convinced He will not do one or the other unless, from the bottom of your heart, you have decided and started to actively take the first steps, putting into practice this sixth great principle of liberation. If you pursue pleasure, you will be chained to pain and suffering. But if you do not harm your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and sexual health, and not harm others, you can enjoy as much as you want with full freedom and as often as the opportunity arises. My friend, may joy become your daily bread. For a better understanding of this message, I suggest you study the remaining 6 principles. They are for your liberation. They are very closely related to this principle. Goodbye, my friends.